Well, luckily, it's minimal. But yes, we do absolutely have our challenges. We have people who are afraid and scared because of COVID-19. We now have literally tens of thousands of people who are unemployed because of the economic downturn occasioned by the shutdowns that were necessary because of the president's failed leadership on COVID-19. And we're dealing with the reckoning across Chicago, as in many cities across the country, related to systemic racism. So we are on the front line of an incredible moment in our civic history, not only in Chicago, but across the country. And I have to say, the remark about the bridges, one of the bridges that we put up is near Trump Tower, because our protesters and vigilantes would love nothing more than to attack Trump Tower. So those little notes that I get from Eric Trump after every time that we've protected that property, if they want us to stop, say the word.
Lawlessness, lawlessness, and more lawlessness. We all see it. Lori Lightfoot can try to come up with as many explanations for why the city of Chicago is having record high shootings and murders. But we already know what the answer is. We know it's because the Democrat Party, in a fit of rage, in a fit of childish anti-Trump anger, and feeling like they're not in power, they need their people in power in D.C., decided to undermine police, and with that, really a fundamental bulwark of our whole society. That's what happened. They can try to come up with as many different diversions and digressions from it as possible, but it's very clear to anyone, I think, who's paying attention and being honest that we're seeing this spike in violence in the cities. You know, they're still looking for that guy out in Portland who kicked the individual in the face. Many of you might have seen this video. He's pulled out of a car. There's an angry mob. They throw him on the ground, and then they beat him while he's on the ground. And then this guy runs up and just soccer ball kicks him right in the face. He's totally defenseless, helpless, doesn't see it coming. It's such a cruel and vicious thing. These are all Democrats who are doing this. The people that want to lecture you, how could you vote for Trump, have no contempt for the people that are representing in their own way the Democrat Party, who are burning down neighborhoods and attacking people and engaged in the most disgraceful mob activities imaginable, right? But they don't care. They don't care. The looting, the rioting, none of that really matters. In fact, they secretly like it. I've always believed that there's a much broader support for this looting among Democrats than you'll usually see, than you'll see out in the open, because they think that America needs to be punished. I really believe this. I think the Democrat Party believes that America needs to be punished. And even if, it's a collective punishment, and even though it's going to affect a lot of Democrats too, we need to be made to suffer for the sin of electing Donald Trump. And that's central to a lot of what you see going on here. You're just never going to convince Democrats that he won the election fair and square in 2016. And even if you could, then they would say, well, clearly this country needs to be cleansed of its Trump support. This country needs to go through a very difficult and dangerous time for the crime of electing Donald Trump. That is how they view it. I told you this. I remember in the 2012 election when Barack Obama won 4 more years, there was no part of me that was, let's say he cheated, or let's pretend he's not the president. Let's go march and say he's not really the president. Let's figure out a way to entrap his senior officials and maybe try to imprison him or members of his family. All things that Democrats do when Trump wins. And I think that one of the problems in this paradigm that we have to address is we've been led to believe that the two political parties in this country are like, man and wife, or, man and woman, you need to come together. There's an inherent, they're different. Oh, no, I know, 2 genders, right? You're not allowed to say that anymore. But that they come together, unitive, and then they procreate, and it's better for the future, and that, you need the one, we're yin and yang, however you want to put it. We're the necessary ballast in our societies that we have these two parties. Keep in mind that the history of a lot of political parties around the world is that eventually one of them, becomes the hamster in the cage that eats all the other hamsters, which, as I understand it, can happen sometimes. Eventually, they grow to a de facto, if not de jure, one-party state. And I think Democrats see that in their future. I think that they believe that. And I also think that the Democrat Party, what it has stood for in the past, that at the time was either a good idea or at least a sensible idea or whatever. They now have reached a point where there's nothing that they are advocating for that I say, in practice, this will work the way they say it will, and it will be good for all of us. There's nothing I can think of where that is the case. In fact, the same way that I tell you I believe that the Black Lives Matter movement will make everything worse for everyone, I believe, and has done that. I believe that the Democrat Party, if they're in power, is going to accomplish the same feat of making things worse for everybody. I think that's absolutely the case. And that's why I think it's so important that we continue to push with everything we have against this Democrat onslaught against Trump, because it's going to be something that we all pay for if they manage to get their way here, and they're able to convince. It's not that hard to do. It's going to be a very close election. If they're able to convince people that they should get another shot, that some kind of a change, remember, hope and change, some kind of a change is necessary, then they'll be in a position to perhaps turn America into the one-party state using, I already told you the mechanism is. It's not that hard. They want amnesty. If they get amnesty for illegal aliens in this country, they have an unbeatable national voting advantage, because they're going to get amnesty, and then they're going to pass, as soon as they can, voting rights for those who are amnestied in the country. It's a 1-2 punch, folks. There's no way that they're not going to do that. And once you give a right like that, you're not going to be able to take it away. So if that happens, then you can forget about winning national elections, and you're just going to be left with whatever freedoms you think you can get from your state government while your state's still red, which not going to be that many of those left either. So I'm just saying we need to understand what the other side wants and what they would do. And then we also have to see what the tactics are going to be. They've got the Russia collusion story out there. But they've also got this post office situation that continues to play out. They're talking to us all the time about how this is a way that Trump is going to steal the election. And you notice some of the furthest left members of Congress are the ones who are pushing this the most.
Postmaster DeJoy can say whatever he wants about what changes will or will not happen in the future. He has lost the trust of the American people. He has lost our trust to make sure that he will follow through. After they said that they would suspend taking mailboxes out, there were reports and there was confusion about whether that was continuing to happen or not. We need to get him under oath on a committee, letting us know what is happening, and we have to undo the damage that he has already done.
What damage has already been done? And I think it's fascinating that there's the assumption that limiting people's ability to vote by the mail is automatically going to dramatically benefit Democrats everywhere and all across the country. It may be true, but why is that true? I think that's worth digging into a little bit more than anybody has recently in the media. But the Postmaster DeJoy as bad guy story that we're told here, they've already said we're not going to move any more post office boxes. We don't want everybody to freak out. So we're going to everybody needs to calm down a little bit here. We're going to figure this out. Just chillax. It's going to be all right. No, Democrats can't do that. Because if they get everybody all worked up about this from the very beginning, then guess what? Even if they lose the election, they have a built-in excuse. And if they win the election, well, then they'll be very happy that they got as much mail-in voting as they possibly could. So they feel like they get it either way. Oh, I just as a something that I left that I wanted to get to here. The one person that you're just absolutely not allowed to criticize at all as a member of the media and in public discourse, and I mean, you can't say anything, Michelle Obama. And I give credit to President Trump because the pre-Trump GOP would have absolutely adhered to the no criticism of Michelle Obama rule. And that is one of the reasons why we lose, right? Because they can create invincible messengers for their side. And we play along with this and say, whoa, we can't criticize that person, even when they're stepping out into public and becoming a political figure. President Trump had some thoughts on Michelle Obama's speech. Play 20.
Do you want to respond to Michelle Obama's speech last night where she said that you're in over your head and the wrong president for the country?
She was over her head, and frankly, she should have made the speech live, which she didn't do. She taped it, and it was not only taped, it was taped a long time ago because she had the wrong deaths. She didn't even mention the vice presidential candidate in the speech, and she gets these fawning reviews. If you gave a real review, it wouldn't be so fawning. I thought it was a very divisive speech, extremely divisive. We have a tremendous amount of enthusiasm for my campaign. No, I thought her speech was very divisive, and frankly, I wouldn't even be here if it weren't for Barack Obama. See, we're standing in the White House. I wouldn't be in the White House except for Barack Obama because they did a bad job. Biden.
That's one of the things I love about the president is that they would expect under any other Republican, you just have to bow down to Saint Michelle Obama. You're not allowed to say anything other than this speech was amazing. And there was a little bit of that with the Jill Biden stuff last night. Why? Look, if you think it's fine, I would say, yeah, she's talking to her husband. It's fine. Whatever. It was forgetful. I don't care. Everyone's, they're all so impressed with her. I don't know why. Conservatives can't help it. We have so many people in conservative media, particularly, who just want the libs to pat them on the head a little bit on Twitter, or just want, a New York Times writer to say, he or she, I guess, isn't so bad after all. We have this need, this compulsion for that little pat on the head from the mainstream media. It's so very sad. But that is what happens. President Trump willing to say about Michelle Obama what other people are not, which is that the speech wasn't that great. It's not really that impressive. I don't know why we all have to act like this is everything she does is amazing. And I've said before that I think she'd be very potent for the Democrats if they were to run her, but that's just because Democrats are obsessed with. Democrats love Michelle Obama. So you have huge base turnout, huge African-American turnout. But if we're trying to be objective about who she is and what she's capable of and what I don't know. I don't really see it. Didn't Colin Powell speak last night too? I didn't see his speech, but come on, Colin Powell. Who cares? I think if anything, it's useful to have these former quote Republicans who come forward, the Romneys and the Colin Powells, who come forward and say stuff that just lets us all know they were never really conservative. They were kind of gentlemen Republicans. They're kind of like country club Republicans. Goodyear Tires gets woke. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Another company that you would never think is super political decides it's time to get really political. Goodyear Tires, according to slides that have been shared now online, has a policy banning Maga hats or any attire for employees on the job under its ban on hateful speech. So this is now a large corporation that is saying you wanting to support the current occupant of the White House is hateful speech. Trump tweeted about this. Don't buy Goodyear tires. They announced a ban on MAGA hats. Get better tires for far less. This is what radical left Democrats do. Two can play the same game, and now we have to start playing it now. This is about response to lib corporate political tyranny. And I'm somebody who has always said I don't like boycotts. I wish people would stop. But we have entered the fight fire with fire phase of this now. So yes, I think that people shouldn't buy Goodyear tires. I've evolved on this point, or changed, or flip-flopped, whatever you want to call it. As I go back and forth, I think there are competing goods here. On the one side of things, I don't want a hyper-politicized society where everything is constantly about who you support and who you voted for. And I do think that we need, for us to be a healthy society, areas of our lives that are escapes from that. Oh, like sports, which the libs have also taken away from us now. So I think that's all very important. But I also think that the only way that they will stop what they do is if they understand that this becomes mutually assured destruction, because they otherwise they just have an advantage, right? It's a one-way war, and they're going to win over time. So the president calling for for not buying Goodyear tires, I'm sure they're going to say this is some kind of a violation of, I don't know, the Constitution or the Hatch Act or something like that. I'm quite sure that will come out of this at some point, because they've always got some rule book reason for why whatever Trump did is terrible. It's the worst thing ever. You also at Goodyear cannot wear anything that supports Blue Lives Matter or All Lives Matter. Does anyone want to guess, though? Can you have Black Lives Matter? Oh, yes, you can have that. You can have Black Lives. So you can have a left-wing Marxist political movement responsible for the destruction of neighborhoods and the murder and assault of individuals all across the country. You can have that, but you can't have Blue Lives Matter. You can't have, you can't have stuff like that. They also Goodyear put out in their statement, we ask that they refrain from workplace political campaigning as well as other similar forms of advocacy that fall outside the scope of equity issues. This is the company officially saying it. Okay. So equity issues. So you can wear, LGBTQ pride shirts. You can wear Black Lives Matter. Whatever the left approves of as an equity issue. I noticed they've moved from equality to equity, and that's a very important distinction. Equality is that we all are treated the same in the eyes of the law. Equity is we all have the same. Not just the concept that we are the same as people. That's equality. Equity is we all have the same stuff at the end. It's equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. But you see now corporate media is very clearly letting people know that there will be carve-outs. Just like in the pandemic gathering policy, there were carve-outs for BLM protests. There are carve-outs in corporate speech now. Yes to BLM, no to Maga. This is a toxic part of our corporate culture that we have to fight back on.
Time for roll call.
Facebook.com/Buck Sexton or Team Buck at iHeartMedia.com. Let's get to it. Alex writes, Buck, I discovered you about a year ago, and your show quickly became a daily can't miss. I appreciate the unique, knowledgeable, and often hilarious perspective you bring to news talk. Even in the extra repetitive, beat-down news cycles of 2020, I feel like I'm going to find some gold by tuning in or downloading each day. Well, Alex, thank you so much. That's really very, very kind of you and very motivating. As a conservative in my 20s, it's been great to discover our team has some young intellectuals that bring fresh perspective and make worthwhile points. And it's nice to know I don't have to get yelled at by the most grating voices of any time I want to get a news digest outside of the mainstream. Who are those really grating voices who yell at people? I wonder. I hope the platforms of interesting, collected, and entertaining hosts like you and Mike Slater only continue to grow exponentially, because I'm sure it will play an important role in winning over the younger generations who conservatives have been failing to reach for so long. They desperately need to get a true picture of what conservative is about so the brainwashing cycles of mainstream culture can be broken. Thank you for standing up for your beliefs, and know that I will be passing the buck to anyone I don't worry will throw a brick through my window. Shields high. Well, Alex, great to have you as part of the team. Thank you so much for your kind note and willingness to pass the buck. And yeah, look, conservatives, because I've said this for a long time, because conservatives don't go through life, especially in the culture and in academia, they don't go through life with the constant expectation that they will have their beliefs reflected by all the people around them, and that they understand that if they share their thoughts, people will find it acceptable to attack them. We are much more durable and rigorous in our intellectual positions than your average leftist is. It's just true. I mean, I've always said that while I went to a very liberal college, I came out of it more confident than ever in my conservative beliefs, because I was always having to go toe-to-toe with the other side, including the professors in my classes, which wasn't really helpful for my GPA. But I'm used to that. And one thing, you know, I've been asked before, why did you become a conservative? And it really comes from, you could say it's just having a BS detector of sorts. But I remember being told things that were liberal beliefs or ideas, you know, progressive Democrat kind of stuff at a very young age. I mean, going back maybe to freshman year of high school, even 8th, 9th grade, I would be told things and I would just say, but that's not true, right? That's not what really happens, or that's not really what did happen in the past. That was where I had my first sense of conservatism, seeing things for, if you see things for what they are, and you have the ability to be objective about different aspects of reality, history, the human experience, you will be conservative, right? If you think that your emotional connection to ideas and the self-fulfillment of the connection to those ideas is the most important thing, you will increasingly find yourself a liberal, right? This misplacement of, they would consider it idealism, and I think it's just shallow virtue signaling. This is how people I know become liberals, because the liberals that I know in New York, and I do know plenty of them, you know, they will tell you that they care so much about BLM, for example, and then all you have to do to really enrage them, I'm talking about white liberals now that I know, is say, really, when was the last time that you spent the night in a majority black neighborhood? When was the last time, I asked my white liberal friends, when was the last time you slept over at a black friend's house, even? What exposure do you, liberal, have in real terms to the black community in high crime areas? I'm not talking about, you know, your buddy that also went to Harvard with you and lives across the street in Tribeca or something. I'm saying the black community that is struggling, what connection do liberals have to? The answer is nothing. The answer is they're total phonies on it. And yet they like to believe that because they will vote for Joe Biden, they have such a connection to the black community. It's pretty stunning. It's a really self-aggrandizing delusion. That's what you end up getting from it. And there are conservative ideas that are out there that I struggle with. I go back and forth on. How much protection can religion have from government? And there are areas of real intellectual pursuit and areas of real debate that need to happen. You know, the death penalty is one for me. That's always one. I bring that one up a lot, where I say I'm uncomfortable with the death penalty until I see what happened to that 5-year-old boy in North Carolina, and then I'm ready to flip the switch myself on the guy who shot him. Right? And I know that, and maybe that's an emotional response, but I do feel some hesitation, especially because I feel like the state is not to be trusted. In general, the state is not to be trusted. So I go back and forth on that one. I see that's what happens, though, Alex. You write in something like that to me, and you get me really going on some things, and I'm a little delayed on the rest of the roll call now. So let's get to it. Brett, yo, Buck. I'm getting my concealed carry here in Ohio in a town just outside Cincinnati. I called my local sheriff's office to schedule an appointment on August 3rd, got a return call on August 10th. The first available appointment was September 30th. I'm not sure how many appointments per day they have, but it feels good knowing everyone in my town is getting their concealed carry. Yeah, Brett, I wish it were legal here in New York. I would love someone to explain to me how a person with zero criminal record, nothing but a history of responsible civic behavior, and, someone like me who has been trained by the federal government to use firearms safely and properly, why shouldn't I be able to go just go to the, if I want, the local police precinct, not one police plaza, the big police station, the headquarters in New York, which looks like something out of the Soviet Union. It looks like you're never going to come out of it when you go in. But why can't I just go to my local precinct and, fill out one form and get a concealed carry permit? Or maybe take a 2-hour class or something if they want me to. But no, in New York, it's basically impossible. Unless you're politically connected, unless you got some ability to move the needle a little bit with the powers that be, you can't get. Why can't I get a concealed carry permit? I have a Second Amendment right to bear arms and to defend myself, but they take that away from me. I'm glad, Brett, that you are able to enjoy your Second Amendment rights, so good on you with that. TJ, Buck, in regards to the cringeworthy DNC speeches, what do you think Republicans ought to do to make their convention a little more bearable? Has there been any consideration to live audiences at various locations? Obviously, with appropriate social distancing measures to avoid any sort of scrutiny from the left. Alternatively, maybe they should scrap some of the speeches and instead have live panel discussions where people can write questions into the guest speakers, or have some long-form interview segments with some of our favorite podcasters and radio hosts, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, and guests. Just my 2 cents. Let's make this virtual convention great, or at least greater than the Democrat convention. TJ, I have no idea what the Republicans have planned for their convention, but I am with you in that I am very hopeful that it is far more impressive than what we have seen from the Democrat convention so far. I think the Democrat convention will be forgotten before it's even over. I think nobody cares, nobody remembers. No one has emerged as a new star of this convention. Interesting, they only gave AOC 60 seconds to speak. You would have thought that they would have tried to elevate her more, but it makes sense, doesn't it? Biden, the pragmatic centrist, that's what they're saying, and Kamala Harris, the pragmatic moderate, right? They don't want to give too much of a spotlight to AOC because AOC is going to speak the truth about the radicalism of the Democrat Party. They don't want that. They want somebody that they can play this game of, it's just a person who's got some thoughts on some stuff. Yeah. So, TJ, as for the specific mechanics of how this is all going to work and what can be done, I don't know what they're able to do. I think that I'm hoping they've got something good planned. That's all I can tell you. Because what would be so great would be to have, could you imagine if Trump was able to do the rallies again? If we didn't have this pandemic, it's like this whole thing was tailor-made to even the odds between Trump and Sleepy Joe. It means you can't gather. It means the economy is down. I mean, this is why you never know in politics. I would have bet the farm, so to speak, back in December of 2019 that Donald Trump was going to win re-election. How could he not? Now, it just feels like it could go either way. I think, look, I'm hopeful. I think he's going to pull it off. But nobody really knows. Richard writes in, Buck, happy Hoosier hellos. If AOC does this postcard thing, we should all sign up and send them postcards of guns or dip them in oil, pro-life cards, etc., and just watch the libs' heads explode. Shields high. Well, Richard, that's one way to go. I'm not sure that would really work out all that well, but I see what you're doing. I like the humorous attempt, but I don't think we're going to get too far with that one. I don't see that one really happening. Eric, Buck, and producer Mark. I ordered Life Cinnamon from Instacart. The box was a little damaged. The box was open but plastic closed. What do I do? Also, how do we get rid of de Blasio? I work in alcohol sales at bars, and some owners are not hearing indoor seating until next year. Thanks for the great work. I'll take the second part, and I'll pass the first one to Producer Mark. I don't believe that Democrats are going to allow the major cities to open indoor dining until 2021.
Just eat the damn cereal. It was sealed.
Producer Mark says, eat the cereal, don't be a wimp.
They can hear us. They can hear me, too.
No, I know. I'm just affirming that is your official statement.
Wouldn't you eat it?
Yeah, as long as the plastic was still sealed, I'd eat it.
Like, if you look at the plastic and you see, like, a hole in it or something, yeah, I would go return the cereal. But just the box is damaged. Who cares?
Producer Mark, where are you on dropping food on the ground and then eating it?
You don't eat it.
Interesting.
Unless there's, like, a very specific circumstance where maybe you just clean the floor. But
what about washing it, though? No?
Well, what is it? Like, is it raw chicken?
That's
Or is
gross.
it cooked?
No. You drop a grape on the floor. Do you eat it or no?
No. Well, why risk it?
I guess there's. It's not like you have one grape, right? I mean, that would be kind of sad.
You're gonna have a bowl of grapes.
You usually have a lot of grapes.
Yeah.
So that might work out in that respect. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's it's always a sad thing when you get your life cereal and the box is broken. I don't know. There you go, Eric. I'm glad that it's all going to work out in the end for you, though. Patrick writes, seriously, you don't know that Buffalo Springfield was an iconic group that was at the start of the country rock movement? From that group sprang Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, and Poco, whose members later showed up in Loggins and Messina and the Eagle. Still, everybody loves Buck Sexton. Thank you, Patrick. No, there are some holes in my music knowledge, and I did not, in fact, know Buffalo Springfield. But to be fair, Producer Mark, did you know Buffalo Springfield?
I've heard the name. I've definitely heard of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, but I wouldn't say it's my go-to listening habits.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. CC, next up in the mix here. My boyfriend and I listen every day. Thank you, CC. That's awesome. It makes us so happy. Since MSM talking heads can only seem to spew complete lies fed to them by their globalist masters, it has been so refreshing to hear your intelligible thoughts on today's current events. We pass the buck every chance we get. Keep up the good work. Shields high. Cece, thank you so much. Passing the buck is how we get more and more people to listen to this show to counteract the lib insanity, and it is the single most helpful, and it's our favorite thing. We love when people pass the buck. Spotify, if you know someone listens to Spotify, so easy. You just type in Buck Sexton. It'll pop up. They can listen anytime. Subscribe there. The iHeartRadio app, you can type in Buck Sexton. Same thing. It'll pop up and listen. And it's on demand. So you can listen live if you want on the iHeart app, or you can listen to the Buck Sexton channel. Right, Producer Mark? Isn't that how it goes?
Well, yes, there's a Buck Sexton channel that will just play random shows all day, and obviously the real show will be live 6 to 9, and then if you search the Buck Sexton Show podcast, you can get the show on demand anytime you want.
There you go. Well, anyway, thank you, C. Did I say CC? I think it's just C. Thank you, C. We really appreciate it. And then we bring it home here with Alan. Buck, I suspect you may be wrong about Kamala's Succession. Side note, guys, Succession is a great show. Highly recommend. Loved every episode. Maybe one or two episodes a little slow, but really thought it was a great show and think that you should all check it out. It's very, very good. And also really enjoying Bosch. I think I give Bosch an A, maybe an A+. Same with Succession. And I was without show to watch for a while, so this is very exciting for me that I found two great, although Succession is done. I need the third season to come back. Alan then writes about the Kamala succession. They will have Robo Joe hold the seat for 2 years and 1 day, then retire him so Kamala can make a run at the 9 years and 364-day presidency, making it effectively a 3-term demolition project. Not that I want this, but as crazy as everything else has gone this year, I think it's probable. Isn't that kind of... didn't I say that after Joe... I said by the midterms he'll leave and hand it over to Kamala so she can then run as president for re-election. So...
How does that work, though? Can she get a second term out of that?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Has it ever happened in history? I feel like if anyone knew, you would.
I usually that is true of me, but producer Mark, I appreciate the faith, but on this one, I actually don't know. I assume you can only get. I assume that your partial term is considered a term, but we'll check into that. Thanks everybody for being here. Pass the buck. Check us out at bucksexton.com. Shields high.